IISS Manama Dialogue in Bahrain. By the way, this year's Manama Dialogue will take place between the 17th and the 19th of November in the Kingdom of Bahrain. And given the growing relationships between the countries of the Middle East and those of Asia, we all look forward to having a strong representation of Asians to our 19th IISS Manama Dialogue in Bahrain. Minister Prabowo also attended the first IISS Riyadh Defense Forum on March 5, 2022, which we held in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we look forward to strengthening our links there. And for the second time at the IISS Shangri-la Dialogue, Lee Jong-sup, the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea. The challenges in East Asia and the Korean Peninsula have been referred to already a number of times this morning, and given especially some of the ambitions announced by the DPRK recently in relation to testing its rocket and satellite technology, it's vital that we had early on in this Shangri-La dialogue the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea, and attending his first IISS Shangri-La dialogue, Joseph Borrell Fondel, the High Representative and Vice President of the European Commission. We did have some years ago Federica Mogherini come, and we had some years before that Catherine Ashton come. So it's a delight for us to have the High Representative with us here. So you will have a Southeast Asian perspective, an East Asian perspective, and a European perspective on the challenges in resolving regional tensions. But may we first begin with Minister Prabowo. The floor and that podium is yours. Thank you very much, sir.
Dr. Chipman, distinguished participants of this year's session of the Shangri-La Dialogue. First of all, it is indeed a great honor for me to once again be invited to speak in this important assembly of distinguished leaders in the defense and security fields of not only the Indo-Pacific region, but also from all over the world. We see today in this meeting many ministers, many leaders, many defense and security officials, not only from this region, but from the Americas, from Europe, from the Middle East. This shows how important events like this Shangri-La Dialogue has become. I totally agree with some previous speakers that consider meetings like the Shangri-La Dialogue to be important platforms for the exchange of views, personal contacts, discreet conversations, private meetings, which are all important ways to diffuse tension, overcome misunderstandings, and create a confidence-building environment. We all, I think, agree that this world, that our Earth, has become a small planet. And we are, all of us, facing common global threats to our security and our livelihood. We have together just overcome. We have just managed to mitigate the near disastrous COVID-19 pandemic. Even at this time, experts in the medical fields and the field of microbiology warn us not to lessen our guard against these global biological threats. My friends in the medical field warn me that there are now new mutations of the original COVID-19 virus appearing again. Distinguished friends, participants, these are but a few examples, some examples of the universal threats that we will face, all of us, in this small planet of ours. Also, experts warn us that we face in the near future, in this 21st century, crisis in energy, in water, and of course, in food supply and food security. It is imperative for us to overcome our geopolitical rivalries, our territorial disputes, through dialogue, negotiations, and win-win solutions. The Asian tradition of compromise is, I think, not really only an Asian tradition. Historically, compromise is the only way that communities and societies can prosper. Distinguished friends, the adagium that might makes right actually is not an eternal adagium. When there's a mighty power, there usually will come a mightier power in the neighborhood. That is the history of mankind. The history of mankind teaches us that compromise and coexistence is the only viable route to prosperity. Therefore, in the context of tensions in our part of the world and in the Indo-Pacific region, and also in other parts of the world, I myself actually have a more optimistic outlook. Let us be very open. The security situation in the Indo-Pacific, especially in Asia, in East Asia, is one dominated primarily by the tensions rising from the rise of China to become again a great world power. And this is interfaced with the United States' role as a preeminent global power. History teaches us when a rising great power meets a preeminent global power, tensions do arise, and the historical record shows many of these conflicts result in open conflict, kinetic conflict. However, this rivalry, some have suggested, has turned into a new Cold War. It is being called the Second Cold War. And in this so-called new Cold War, as in all wars, whether hot or cold, the danger of catastrophe is always near. Especially in this age of ours, this age of advanced science and technology, of artificial intelligence, quantum leaps, in new discoveries, in new technologies. In this age, any confrontation of force can very quickly result in a dangerous descent to disaster. I've been told by experts in Indonesia, even if Indonesia is not involved in any open conflict. If there is a nuclear war, the difference between those directly involved and Indonesia is we will die a slower death, but we will suffer as well. However, I am of the opinion that the leaders of the two leading powers in this great rivalry are actually wise leaders. I am of the opinion that they are aware of the burden they have on their shoulders. I am sure they must feel the weight of this burden. They are also very aware of the great history of their nations and their civilizations. China has a long and great history, maybe the longest recorded history of mankind. China has been and will surely continue to be a great civilization. The United States is also part of the Western civilization. This Western civilization has also given humankind Renaissance and the Enlightenment. Science, new discoveries that have improved the livelihood of humankind. Both these great civilizations, the Chinese civilization and the Western civilization at present now being led by the United States, have contributed to the great advance and progress of humankind. Therefore, I am convinced that the leaders of both China and the United States and the West will resolve these conflicts through compromise, cooperation, and with humanism, resulting in a peaceful resolution of their differences. I am confident that through leadership and wisdom, great statesmanship will prevail amongst the leaders of these great powers. Perhaps I can be considered one of the eternal optimists, but I do not deny that I'm an optimist, because the only alternative to an optimistic view is one that I do not dare to consider. This is, I think, not only my hope, but the hope of many around the world. I would like now also to address the conflict in Europe. That is Ukraine-Russian conflict. I address this because I see many of our European friends present here in this forum. Yes, the Shangri-La dialogue has been in the past focused primarily on the Indo-Pacific region. But the presence of so many of our friends from Europe testify to the fact that security in the Indo-Pacific is affected by security and the situation in Europe, and vice versa. As I said, our planet has become smaller. What happens in Ukraine affects the livelihood of all the peoples of the world. The price of energy has gone up. The price of food has gone up. This has resulted in much suffering for many peoples of the world. Therefore, I would like to put forward the proposition that is not out of context for us to try to contribute to the resolution of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I therefore would like to take this opportunity to urge, to recommend with utmost urgency for our brothers in Ukraine and in Russia to come as soon as possible to a cessation of hostilities. I propose that the Shangri-La dialogue find a mode of declaration urging both Ukraine and Russia to immediately start negotiations for peace. This declaration should be voluntary from all participants here representing their various countries. But I propose the general outline of the peace plan as follows. First, a ceasefire in place. That is, a cessation of hostilities in place at the present positions of both conflicting parties. Two, withdrawal 15 kilometers each from their forward positions to a new demilitarized zone. Three, the United Nations Monitoring and Observer Force to be immediately formed and to be immediately deployed along this new demilitarized zone. Five, the United Nations should organize, carry out, and execute a referendum in the disputed territories to ascertain objectively the wish of the majority of the inhabitants of the various disputed areas. And I would like to declare at this present moment that Indonesia is prepared to contribute military observers and military units under the peacekeeping auspices of the United Nations. These steps, I think, has proven in history to be effective. Let us not here put blame on any side. There are always two versions to any conflict. Both sides feel strongly of their righteousness. But for the security of the world, for the safety of the innocent, we have to achieve cessation of hostilities as soon as possible. I refer to historical examples. In Korea, a big and massive conflict was resolved by a cessation of hostilities and a demilitarized zone. Yes, the conflict in Korea has still to be resolved permanently. However, for at least 5 decades, we have had some sort of peace, which is much better than the massive destruction and the killings of many innocent people. Distinguished participants, I do not know if my proposals can be accepted, but at least let us try to put forward some concrete recommendations so that meetings like the Shangri-La dialogue will have more substance, more meaning, and can prove to be a platform that can contribute to the diffusion and de-escalation of armed conflict. Once again, because our planet has become smaller, it is more imperative for us to achieve peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Prabowo, and you open up lots of things for discussion, and it is unambiguously the case that everyone, I think, in this room will agree with your principal proposition that peace and security in the Euro-Atlantic area are intimately connected to peace and security in the Indo-Pacific zone. Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. This is the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea. It is my great pleasure to be standing here again this year from last year, and I'd like to make my speech on resolving regional tensions. First of all, I would like to extend my congratulations on the 20th anniversary of the Shangri-La dialogue. Allow me to offer my special congratulations and thanks to IISS Director General and Chief Executive Dr. John Shipman and his team, and the Coordinating Minister for National Security of the Republic of Singapore, His Excellency Teo Chee-hin. Due to recent complex security challenges, the tension in the region is rising. As a result of the continuation of the war in Ukraine and historical and geopolitical factors, the security environment of the international community is facing many uncertainties. In addition, unconventional security threats such as infectious diseases, climate change, cybercrimes, and terrorism are deepening the uncertainties.
중시키고 있습니다.
Amid such circumstances, North Korea, despite the strong oppositions by the international community, is adhering to its nuclear and missile developments. The advancing nuclear and missile capabilities of North Korea are threatening the rules-based order, which we jointly protected to this day. North Korea developed missiles with various ranges and types and carried out provocations in an unprecedented frequency and intensity from last year to the beginning of this year.
또한 3월
On top of that, 3 days ago on May 31st, violating UNSC resolutions, it fired a space launch vehicle using ballistic missile technology.
특히 북한
In particular, completing its preparation for the 7th nuclear test, North Korea made explicit the threats to use nuclear weapons, suggesting the possibility of preemptive nuclear attack through its announcement of nuclear force policy in September last year. North Korea is the only country that threatens a preemptive attack with nuclear weapons against a specific country.
입니다. 이와 같은
Such a behavior is a point-blank violation of UN Security Council resolutions. It is also a breaking of a promise made in 1991 between the two Koreas that declared denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. Not to mention, this is also an unlawful action that directly undermines the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty preserved by the international community since the Second World War. The reckless nuclear and missile development of North Korea is increasing concerns of nuclear proliferation, causing regional arms race.
그 결과
As a result, the security dilemma of rising security costs for each country is expanding. Strengthening the ROC Japan and ROC US Japan security cooperation is also an inevitable measure taken to protect regional freedom and peace from the advancing North Korean nuclear and missile threats.
합의한 조치인 것입니다. 그만큼
North Korean threats are that measure a challenge that deeply agitates the structure of regional security. In addition, North Korea's human rights problems, turning graver by the day, pose critical threats to universal values and rules of humanity. The Kim regime, obsessed solely with advancing nuclear and missile capabilities, is turning a blind eye on the lives of its people who suffer from food shortage and economic crisis. Had the Kim regime used money on purchasing food instead of spending it on developing nuclear weapons and missiles, including 34 launches of ballistic missiles last year, the North Korean people would not be starving as they do today. Infringement of human rights of the North Korean people is also at a severe state. Even as I speak, North Koreans are living under the harshest reality of human rights violation, with their basic freedom and rights set forth by the UN unguaranteed.
세계인
Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms without distinction of any kind.
내용을 포함하고 있습니다. 북한의 참혹한
The abysmal human rights conditions of North Korea regress from the universal values that the international community seeks to uphold and damage the values of freedom, rule of law, and human rights in the Indo-Pacific. North Korean human rights challenge is no longer a problem of an individual country. Rather, it is a collective task for which all members of the Indo-Pacific must together condemn and look for solutions.
우리 정부는
For the past few years, the ROC government attempted to solve North Korean problems by relying on good faith of North Korea, that if we offered kindness, North Korea will embark on the path of denuclearization. However, the then advocated denuclearization and lasting peace turned out to be fake and unveiled itself to be undeniably false. Even when denuclearization talks and discussions for improving relations were in progress, North Korea was operating plutonium and uranium enrichment programs and continued illegitimate activities of nuclear and missile capability development.
그리고 이는 북한이
This indeed has been proven by various missile and other weapons recently revealed by North Korea. Meanwhile, the livelihoods of the North Korean population were jeopardized, human rights further aggravated. In order to solve North Korean problems substantively, we have to consolidate our intent and convince North Korea to change the thoughts and behaviors in the right direction.
가야 합니다. 이를 통해
Doing so would bring about genuine peace on the Korean peninsula and in the region. Since the Yoon administration took office in May last year, the Republic of Korea has striven to change North Korea's miscalculation and misbehavior by pursuing peace on the Korean peninsula. First, we are strengthening the capability and posture of the ROC military and deterring North Korean nuclear and missile threats based on a strong and overwhelming capability with our ally, the United States. These efforts are endeavors to deter North Korean threats and dissuade its nuclear development. Furthermore, our government proposed the audacious initiative, which pledges a substantial improvement of the economy and livelihood of North Korea in return for choosing denuclearization and opening the door of dialogue and diplomacy.
그러나
However, some countries are ignoring North Korea's unlawful behaviors that violate the rules-based international order. This creates holes in sanctions against North Korea passed at the UN Security Council.
또한
And due to objections by countries with important responsibilities, despite North Korea's unprecedented number of missile launches last year, not a single additional UNSC resolution was able to pass.
이러한 가운데 김정은
Meanwhile, by stealing cryptocurrencies, dispatching workers overseas, and conducting illegal maritime transshipment activities, the Kim regime is securing nuclear and missile development funds, further increasing the threats.
북한의 불법적 행
Choosing inactivity to North Korea's unlawful behaviors will worsen the security landscape of not only the Korean peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region, but also the entire world. This will, of course, increase our security costs. Hence, along with the Republic of Korea, I ask that we convene the strength to create a change against threats by North Korea, a state turning the Pacific into its firing range. First of all, based on the understanding that the North Korean issue is a shared challenge, we must condemn its unlawful activities together.
북한의 핵미사일
Disregarding or defending its nuclear and missile development goes against the international order we together maintained. Also, we must blockade North Korea's unlawful activities by faithfully implementing existing UNSC resolutions agreed upon by the international community.
북한의 핵미사일 개발
In order to stop the inflows of funds and supplies for North Korea's nuclear and missile development, we should further reinforce the cooperation of the international community in the form of cyber cooperation and PSI. If North Korea conducts additional provocations such as nuclear test or ICBM launch, we must demonstrate the international community's resolute and united strength by passing UNSC resolutions. With such a united action, we need to change the Kim regime's calculation as following.
북한이 핵위협과 강압을 통해 얻는 이익
We must make North Korea understand that the costs of making nuclear threats and coercions far exceed the benefit of doing so. And that if they continue the illegal activities as they do today, they will only become more isolated. And that they will not be able to solve the problems that they face. We also need to make the regime realize that coercion and threats will never be rewarded, as showcased through the war in Ukraine. While at the same time, that if they open the door for dialogue and choose a novel path, bright future will wait ahead.
지금껏
So far, the process of mankind development entailed the endless journey for universal values of freedom, human rights, and the rule of law. The reason the ROC government announced strategy for a free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region in December last year and contributes to the regional peace and stability is to pitch in on the same journey. Nonetheless, North Korea is regressing from this journey. The instability on the Korean peninsula, caused by its actions, is now evolving into the instability in the Indo-Pacific and the global security. Solving the North Korean challenge is our joint security interest that will enhance freedom and peace of the international community, including the Indo-Pacific. Going forward as well, my government will deter North Korea's nuclear and missile threats with strong power and actively drawing North Korea towards its complete denuclearization through dialogue and diplomacy. Peace on the Korean Peninsula is directly interconnected with the security interests of all of us. I once again ask that the international community continue to assemble the strength so that North Korea will open the door for dialogue and choose a new path. Thank you for listening.